Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the New to Wrestling podcast, After Dark. This is going to be our new kind of shorter podcast about wrestling drama, wrestling tea, all the kind of backstage stuff that me and Kelsey love to get into, that we don't necessarily have time to get into on the show because we're following a timeline. We got things moving, and we gotta talk about what's presented to us, not necessarily all of the backstage
behind
stuff.
the scenes. Yeah, I'm really excited for this.
Oh, absolutely. But as like a little preface, Kelsey and I, we've been friends for 15 years.
Oh my god.
Yeah. When you say it out loud like that, it's nuts.
Wow.
And a kind of a bonding factor of our friendship is our love of intaking drama.
Yeah.
While not ever being a part of drama. That is our calling card. It is our favorite
purpose
thing
in life.
is we love to observe the drama from afar. So
we are that meme of Kim Kardashian in the bushes, like what's going on out here?
And you're not wrong. Literally, I'm like the like your neighbor that comes out in like fuzzy like slippers and her nightgown, like just to be like, what's going on?
You're pretending to like water the begonias.
No, fully, and you're just like watering the sidewalk, just like.
And then you come back and you're like, I think they're getting a divorce 3 houses down.
Yeah, that's who we are, and we've decided to put it in podcast form.
Hey.
So the kind of main thing that we're going to cover is the Dark Side of the Ring television show that airs on Hulu. I'm gonna select some episodes just kind of to avoid spoiling some of the more relevant stuff to the regular podcast for Kelsey's sake. We like to be surprised on our show.
Love it.
Let's just get into it. So this one was going into like the stories of WWF's Sunny and Chris Candido, who is one half of the Body Donnas, for those of you who aren't familiar.
Yeah, and this felt pertinent to us because as of right now, like we started doing this podcast when Sunny was like kind of in the peak of her career.
Right.
And like so many things, also just synchronicity at this time, like in real life, like she's going through a vehicular manslaughter lawsuit. Like we've been doing the podcast since, and she got her sentencing. Like it just felt relevant, like while we're literally watching her in her prime for the podcast, and then in real life her life is literally falling apart.
Right.
So it just felt like this was the best place for us to start because it's been such a thing for us on the main podcast. So
yeah, exactly. So we're gonna dive into it. So Sunny, real name Tamara Lynn Sitch, and Chris Candido, they were apparently they say like high school sweethearts, but I guess they met technically like after. They met while she was attending a wrestling show, and he was wrestling, and he was in a headlock. Could you imagine?
That's
like,
hot. I'm sorry.
Like,
me
what
cute of the century.
Right.
And his mother was like, I actually saw her. Like she literally looked like an angel. Like she was wearing all white and she was sitting there and she looked like effervescent. And this is his mother saying this.
But now that we like know everything that like we know, doesn't it feel like maybe she was like aware of her? Because she was just like, that's the woman that's gonna like bring the downfall of my son.
Yeah, she had like a premonition or something.
Right, like she could just sense that this person was going to be like important in her life, and
really crazy. And the mother was just like, because even she goes, yeah, when I was first getting to know her, like I thought she was great at the time. And there was like a moment of like silence, and you're like, because she's gonna become the worst. Like I was like, oh, that woman was a storyteller, let me tell you. And when we found out they were from New Jersey, I was like, I know why now.
And not even like just from like New Jersey, from like where we grew up. Like I did not realize that whatsoever. They said like he was like the high school that he was like wrestling at, and I was like, the one down the street from where I grew up,
literally
like, the one that was literally closer to walking distance.
Yeah, for both of us, we were closer to his high school than the actual high school we attended, just because of like
weird
circumstance
town
and
lines and
town
whatever.
lines and stuff, because like I took my SATs at that high school because it was technically closer for me to go to than our
Right.
actual high school, which is
Absolutely.
weird, but like
Absolute insanity.
so insane.
Right. With small world. Talk
Yeah,
about small world.
yeah,
So they kind of go into like obviously they go into the backstory of the two, as more so into the backstory of Chris, just
yeah.
because he has more of a backstory until he meets, you know, Tammy.
Yeah,
Uh
like, the brother takes you into, like, his wrestling d dude, the brother for me was actually, like, the main star of this
oh,
episode. What
absolutely.
an angel, what
What
a
an
beautiful
angel.
person, God bless, but he, like it opens with him taking you into what is completely untouched, like, Chris's, like, wrestling, like, vision board room.
Room.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what room it was, I don't know if it was in the basement, I don't know, but it was, like, cutouts and pictures and things and drawings and, like, and he goes, "It's pretty much untouched," like, and how long ago is that? Like, an insane amount of time
Right.
ago,
Right.
and
Right.
it's just like a museum. It was
Yeah,
gut-wrenching.
and no, absolutely, especially like knowing the context of like how his life ended and how young he was, and
Yes.
just it's sad because you're just like, oh, like they probably can't even like stand to touch it or move it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh my god, so sad.
So they go into like the background of Chris. He essentially has always wanted to be a wrestler, so much so that he was like sneaking behind his mother's back, like when he was a
At
teenager,
13.
just like running off to like Brooklyn to like wrestle in a show and like come back and like act like he was at a sleepover. Like there is something, and a lot of wrestlers like have like this story where they're just like, that's what they're doing, and they're gonna do it one way or the other. Like
It's
they're
like they
gonna
receive,
figure
like
out a way to do it.
yeah, it's like they receive the call from the universe, and they're like, "That's just it, that's my path." I would love to know what that's like. Like, to
Right.
just be like, "Yep, that's what I'm supposed to do," and just, like,
Especially
be
at like such a young age,
at
you
such a
know?
young age, and to be able to just know in your heart that's what you're supposed to be doing, and to be able to throw your whole self at, like, fulfilling that dream. Like, he literally made a weight belt at 13 out of, like, a vintage plate that, like, someone
Right.
left behind or something.
At a
Like,
wedding, yeah.
he had a wedding, like, so and he was like, "Alright, better make myself a weight belt." Like, what the
Yeah,
heck?
and like made like a backyard, like a neighborhood like wrestling like league or like promotion. And like that's, you can tell like when somebody loves something that
Yeah.
like they're willing to put so much work into it for
Mhm.
seemingly very little payoff. It's not like this 13-year-old is like making any money, but it's just like he loved something so much that like he needed to make it like a physical thing. He needed to
Yes.
make it real in his world.
I
And
know.
that's, that's touching. Then we kind of get introduced to Jim Cornette, and he
Same.
is, we know Jim Cornette, but we're introduced to Jim Cornette's role in their career. Essentially, he is the reason that they have both been brought into professional wrestling. Originally, it was Chris, and but Sonny's kind of charisma was just like undeniable.
Yep.
So,
So they were
they
in it was like Smoky Mountains
yes,
wrestling? Yeah.
and at that time, Jim Cornette was like the Vince McMahon of Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
like, I think Tammy was pre-med, which
yes,
is insane. So like, she's dating Chris, and they're like, just like she's very supportive. She'll take pictures of him, she'll film his matches, whatever, but she's literally a pre-med student. She wanted to be a plastic surgeon.
right,
And Jim is like, well, he apparently is the one that has the idea to make Tammy, aka Sunny, Chris's manager, which and make her this managerial figure, and he had like the whole setup of like how she was going to be and everything, and he's like, she just had something, and I knew like together they could really like be something so special. And like, so she literally leaves school to do this. Like, as she didn't at first, she was like, "Oh, I didn't think it was going to be anything. Like, I thought I'd just make a couple bucks." And then it just like took off, and then that was like my whole life. Which,
right,
imagine if she hadn't done that. If she was like, "Nah, that's like my boyfriend's thing and I don't want to do it," and she just like became a plastic surgeon.
yeah,
And I whoa.
yeah.
It really is. It feels like a fated story. Like, you could not write this. It's
No, no, it's the twists and turns. I can't. So they are moving up the ranks at Smoky Mountain. they catch the attention of the WWF. So in 1995, they both make their way over.
Mhm.
So Chris ends up in a tag team called the Body Donnas, and uh Tammy, who is now Sunny in the WWF, is their manager. And it is very kind of apparent that she's the star of the situation.
Yes. Which
And
so sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, which they interview Tom Pritchard, who is, Skip, I think?
Yeah,
Skip Bodydonis?
or Zip,
Um,
one of them.
one of them, Skip or Zip. I had no idea that was him. There was, like, obviously, when you see Mick Foley, you're like, "That's Mick Foley." When I saw Jim Cornette, I was like, "Whoa, that's Jim Cornette. Holy moly." Like,
Mhm.
but, like, Tom Pritchard, I was like, "That's him?" He
Right.
looks totally different, and not in a bad way, but he just, like, has brown hair and a beard and, like, just looks like
Right.
an old guy, like,
Right, right,
not
right.
that he's old, but, like, he looks like
An
an
older
older
guy, yeah.
guy. I was like when they said, "Oh, yeah," like, he was like, "I'm Tom Pritchard, and I was one half of the Body Donnas," I was like, "What?
Right.
What?"
Mhm.
Crazy. Did not
So
recognize him.
yeah, so we have this kind of like dynamic now between the two where like
Mhm.
she's clearly the bigger star and
Yeah.
he's kind of just like stuck like floundering.
Yeah.
And it's during this time that apparently like Sunny was not super popular backstage. It was apparently very rumored around that she was like manipulative, and they cut to like Mick Foley and he's like, I never under like I always liked her. I didn't stand that. But my thing is you don't usually see people's like manipulation unless you're the one that they need something from.
I feel like they don't see the manipulation if they're good at it.
Right.
You only see it if they're bad at manipulating people because you don't like because you realize you're being manipulated.
Right.
But like not that I'm saying like Mick Foley had like the wool pull over his eyes, but like because it's Mick Foley. But I agree with that. And I don't know, she is so fascinating to me because, like, I just would love to know, like, if because they said, like, I think she just got a big head because she started out so sweet, and it's crazy to see how she ended up and whatever, but it's like, I don't know, or, like, was that her intention the whole time? Like, I
I don't
just you
know.
don't know, but I think one of in that same segment, Mick Foley said a quote that I thought was so fascinating. He was like, a lot of people I think she was just ambitious, and ambition is he said, "Ambition isn't a bad thing, but it can be if you're a woman in a man's business."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, tea."
Yeah, and especially, when we put it back in like in our regular show, we talk about a lot, like when we have to like put it in the reference of like the time period we're at, and you're like, oh, you gotta remember she is the first like woman superstar for the WWF. She is the
Yep,
first in any capacity, like the first one to kind of break out of being seen as like, just like just less.
yeah,
Um,
and
and no, go ahead.
I could see how a woman being the most downloaded person from the WWE and she doesn't even wrestle, like, could piss some people off.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
she doesn't wrestle, she's not a like, she doesn't really do anything except look super hot, and, like,
Right.
she is, like, everyone's favorite person.
Mhm.
I could see how that would piss people off, especially, like, if you come in with like, you kind of come in off the coattails of an exceptional wrestler who's worked his entire life to get this opportunity, and then to have him be eclipsed by his girlfriend. Like, I can see how that would piss people off.
Right. No, definitely. And especially in that like it was through like it's like no fault of his own. Like he was just given a bad like start, like
Totally, a
just
bad
a
gimmick.
weird, awkward gimmick that like you couldn't really do much with.
Mhm.
And she really like took off like when she got out of being like that gimmick. When she went back to kind of
Totally.
being like the bad, the bad girl. Like that's when, people kind of like gravitate towards her the most because I think that's just kind of naturally like what she's better at, like being the
Totally.
bad girl.
And they said that she knew that, like, she really knew I think Jim Cornette said, like, she knew she would get more popularity by being the villain.
Yeah,
And I
and he
think
said and she didn't mind it. She
she
wasn't
didn't
scared
care.
of it. Like
Yep.
she didn't care how people were going to react to it. Like, she just had it. She just had it.
Yeah. Which I thought it was hysterical that Jim was like, I made her idolize Hillary Clinton because it was Smoky Mountains Wrestling. We're in the deep South. Like everyone
Mhm.
is so Republican and everyone hated Hillary Clinton, like just hated the Clintons, period. And so
Mhm.
I made her idolize Hillary Clinton to like really make people mad. He goes, and people were furious. And then like she just like latched onto that idea of being the villain. It was really, really fascinating. And I don't know if like because she gets into so many things like which we'll talk about like drugs and alcohol and like whatever. I don't know if like she just like when that like villain story where it's like you blur the lines between like who you actually are and what character you've become.
Yes.
Like did she like I
I
would
think
love
that
the
happened,
psychology.
honestly.
Yes, like I feel like the psychology of it is so insane, especially like when you consider WWE and you're that character is your life. It's your paycheck. It's everything. And if you
Right.
don't have it, so like of course the lines are gonna get blurred. Like they have to.
Right. There's no
Oh,
way
it's
like
so
around it.
crazy.
So
Mm-mm.
you did mention just like the drug use generally.
Mhm.
So it's around this time um Chris gets like a neck injury. He breaks his
Wrestling with a
neck.
broken neck.
Yes. And so this is kind of when his drug problem started. Um because it's a slippery slope. And when
Yeah.
you're constantly putting your body through uh what you put your body through as a wrestler, it's not going to feel good. Like, it's
Nope.
not. And then you're going to get to a point where you get an injury, you get prescribed something, and then you feel better. And
Yeah. And I
that's
think
enticing. Like,
yeah.
that's, you know what I mean? If you're being constantly in pain is not fun. So when
Mm,
your career is being constantly in pain and you get offered something that helps, it's a hard thing to not lean into. When your body's
totally.
constantly in pain, you're constantly, and then you have to get up the next day and do it again. You got to get up the
Yep.
next day and do it again. It's not like your body's ever going to get better. Uh
Yep.
so
By doing that, yeah.
it's a what it's like, it's self-fulfilling. Like, you,
Yeah.
your body feels like crap because you're like beating it up every day because you're a wrestler. You take something, you end up feeling like really good for a little bit, and then you end up feeling worse. So then you take something, and like, so that whole thing is going on.
Yeah.
And during this time is when Tammy decides that she is going to have a kind of uh an affair, or she says how she phrased it was
Girl.
that they had broken up, she had a fling with Sean, and then they got back together.
She literally said they were on a break, like a la
Right.
Ross from Friends. And it's like, babe, no, you were not. Like, and that's fine. It is what it is. Like, I'm not saying it's fine, like it was good. I'm just saying like it everybody knew. Because also Marlena was interviewed for this, which
Right.
again did not recognize Marlena until they said it was her, and then I could really see it.
Mhm.
But I was like, I mean, she literally was like, I mean, she was hot, she was fun, she was smart. Like, of course, like she was just like the it girl. Like she was that girl, and everyone knew.
Mhm.
Everyone knew she was having an affair with Shawn Michaels. And even like we talked about it in one of like the earliest episodes
Mhm.
where he
That
calls in from San Antonio
Oh, yeah.
and literally later in the episode, because they're like, Shawn Michaels just chilling at home, like calling in, la la la. And then later they have Sunny call in, and she's also in San Antonio. And like, what other reason would she be there? Like,
Right.
it was just like
Yeah.
so obvious.
Yeah. So that's going on. And then there's this whole conversation as to whether he knew or not.
Girl.
And there was I don't remember who said it. Oh, it was Marlena or Terry Runnels, where she's just like,
Mhm.
how could you not know?
Right.
Like
It
like
was
it
so obvious.
right. And like, even and now, and then they played like a bunch of clips, like of stuff that happened on air during Raw, like the multiple times that he like just planted kisses on her, like kissing her on the cheek when she's like covered in cake, like just being real, and you're just like, oh. Like,
It was obvious from the jump. And like I my heart though was broken when they're talking about I think his brother was like, "Yeah, I mean, we were all partying in like a hotel room or something, and like it's so obvious." Like it kind of like comes up that, like, Tammy is having an affair with Sean, and they, like, start fighting, and, like, I feel so bad for forgetting the brother's name, but the brother pulls Chris, like, out of the room and is like, "Just you have to let her go, you have to let her go," and he says, I Chris says to the brother, like, "I brought her into this business, and it's my responsibility to take care of her." Because, like, he acknowledges, like, she's also going down a dark path because she starts doing drugs recreationally. Like, cause,
Right.
and I think it was, Mick Foley who said it. He was like, "For wrestlers, like, they're taking it because they need to perform." Like you said, it's like that vicious cycle where,
Mhm.
wrestling breaks my body, so I take drugs to wrestle. Like, it's,
Yeah.
like, but she was just doing it because it was around, and I think, like, Chris acknowledged, and I'm, like, totally just, like, making this up, but, like, Chris acknowledged that, like, she's going down a dark path and is like, "I brought her into this, like, she
Right.
wasn't gonna do this, and I brought her to this world, and now it's my responsibility to protect her," and I was like, "Oh my god."
Right, and it shows, like, there's one point where she's like, I think he, like, when in reference to the Shawn Michaels affair, he's like, "I think he knew, I think he just loved me so much that he ignored it." And could you imagine what, like, you're already, like, spiraling in terms of, like, being on, like, a drug problem, and now you have this added emotional pain of the person that, like, is your person, or, like, you thought is your person, is fully having an affair with somebody that you work with and is, like,
Above
perceived as
you,
a higher, like, a more important talent. Like, that's brutal. Like, that's
and she
horrible.
and she said, she was like, "And, I wish, like, I could know, like, I could understand why he ignored it, or, like, what," she was, "and I'll never know. I'll
Right.
never be able to have those answers," and, like, I just can't imagine that, and I it's so interesting. The interviews I wish they had also gotten were from her parents, or her, I don't
Mm,
know if she has siblings or, like, anything, but I was like, I would love to know more to, like, what people in her circle thought about this relationship, because we're
mhm.
getting it mostly from Chris's mother and his brother and, like, the people around them, which
Right.
obviously amazing, but it's like, I would also love to know, like, what they, or, like, her family or her ilk, like, thought about,
Right.
like, Chris, like, from that perspective, because it is,
Mhm.
like, it's just tragic, dude.
Right. Part
Tragic.
of me wonders if that's because at the end they did do, like, the disclaimer that because she's in an ongoing, like, lawsuit, they
Lawsuit,
advise her
yeah,
not to do this. So
maybe the
I
family
have 2,
too.
like, questions. Is it, like, she's couldn't do it because of, like, that, or does she have people that would be willing to do that for her at this point? Because, like,
Yeah, of so many
she's
things that have happened.
right. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like,
Yeah, I truly do not know. I should have looked this up, like, if her parents were around, like, how this
mhm.
happened, like, obviously, at some point, she was on some sort of good path. I mean, she was in school, like, she
No,
had
but they
something
were
going
both
on.
like perceived as very, like innocent and, like, clean, like, young adults. Like, they had never touched alcohol, never, like, took drugs. It was never like, it just wasn't a thing in their life. So, like, to then be, like, picked up and put on that path is that's
Yeah,
rough.
and Mick
And
Foley said too, it's like, it literally takes one, like, you can, take painkillers for a week and you're addicted. Like,
right,
some people can take their 30 days and they're totally fine, and then other people, it's like, within the week, it's too late for you.
right.
And so it
It
just happens so fast.
so we go into this point, like, Chris goes to ECW because he's kind of just, like, fallen down the, like, he has frustrations with where he's at in WWF, so he moves on. LOL. Empty can. He has frustrations with WWE, so he moves on to ECW where he felt like he could be, like, featured more, just, like, used better. And he
Yeah.
does. But
Mhm.
his problems follow him there.
Yep.
In the case that Si Sunny Tammy also makes her way to ECW after she's kind of, I don't wanna say, like, run out of town, but, like, run out of town by Sable.
Yeah.
She kind of
Which
gets replaced as, like, the it girl, by Sable, and the timing, it makes sense. She's already has less of a role where we're watching in our show,
mhm.
and Sable's more and more getting a larger role. So
Right. It's so because she's getting involved in more storylines. It's so crazy. We're literally watching this happen in real time. Like
right.
she's getting involved in more storylines, like with Triple H and like all of this stuff. Like there's more tea there. Like she just, like her kind of like tussling with Mark Miro. Like I don't know. I did not for some reason put two and two together that because when I started watching, like Sable was already there. So I
Mhm.
didn't like think that Sable was like overtaking Sunny. I just thought they were like two very different women. Cause like I think of Marlena, who is just in her own lane. She's
Right.
just her own thing. And it kind of gave like if there's heels and baby faces in wrestling, like there has to be kind of like heels and baby faces in
And
managing because like
right.
Marlena's her own thing. And then like Sable's like the quote unquote good girl.
Right.
And Sunny's the quote unquote bad girl. So to me, it felt like there could be room for everyone. But
Yeah.
apparently that's not the case.
So
So insane.
they both end up in ECW and their problems follow them there. There
Dude.
is also drug use, between the two of them. They show an interview that they do like a backstage like promo situation where Chris is clearly not sober and Sunny Tammy is just like in a stupor, like half like eating a banana, half like lazily looking at the camera. Like it's bad. And
Tough to
then
watch.
tough to watch. And then they like at that point like Paul Heyman like suspends them because of their drug use and then oddly enough like forces them to do this like I want to say like Dr.
It was like a
Phil-esque
tell-all.
like interview where she's talking about like her drug use and all of this stuff and it's like really exposing and really like
It was
why does this need to be on a wrestling show? And like I
yeah.
don't know who said it, but they were just like, this isn't. Oh, it was Jim Cornette. Where he
Jim,
was just like, this isn't like helping either of them. Like,
anybody.
I was like, how are you like forcing them to go through this and not offering them help?
Yeah. And so one, it was like there was one part right before they went into like the tell-all video where the crowd at ECW is literally chanting, "She's a crack whore."
Yeah. Oh, fully.
And like she's walking off out of the arena and she looks so like dejected and hurt and sad and like not in an acting way. Like it looked
No.
really shameful. And I think that's what it was. I think Jim really emphasized that the tell all video didn't feel like a let's bring this to light so we can heal from it. It felt like a punishment to shame and embarrass
Right.
her. And it felt just poorly done intentionally, like to really like again like a punishment, like
Right.
you guys are making us look stupid and now I'm gonna make you look stupid.
Hmm.
And it just like Jim said and like you said, like it didn't help anybody. And this was crazy. Jim like really he is out of pocket but in like the best way in this episode because he's like it felt like he was only doing it for ratings. And I don't know, can we can we
Go
curse
ahead.
on After Dark? Because this is a direct quote. Jim is like, well, I've seen two dogs fucking on the side of the road, and I didn't think it would make for good ratings or whatever. Like, I don't
It
he
wouldn't
said
make
something
good. It
like,
wouldn't make good. I wouldn't put it on my television.
"Yes."
And I was just like, ooh, ooh. And like,
I
and because like Jim personally like feels for them. Like,
because
he-
he really brought them in. He
right,
really is the one that brought her into the fold.
right. So, and he's like, I was mad at Paul for so long. He's like, I can still like work myself up into being mad at him if I think about it for too long.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
Oh,
ooh,
I also want to bring up because we did watch this because this was something else like Jim Cornette revealed, like taking it back when they were still in WWF. And because we watched this episode where the Godwin brothers
oh
slop her.
yeah. Go
And
ahead.
this is dark. This is really, really dark. So they like emphasizing the fact that she was not well liked in the locker room or like behind the scenes. And they said like this slop bucket is specifically reserved for Sunny. And Jim was like, they did disgusting things in that bucket. Like he literally, I put quote, must have been DNA from at least 20 different guys in there. And
And
like
no, that's open to
DNA,
interpretation. That is,
DNA,
I know, I know.
like it And then we saw it happen.
On
We were like, "Cool, yeah, Sunny got hers, la, la, la," and now, like, going back on that, I'm like,
I was like, "That's horrible," and,
"Jesus,
like,
that's
basically, like, hazing, but okay. Uh,
basic." Yeah, it's like that's like a crime. Like, that is it was so crazy, but yeah, Jim was, like, very you could tell, like, a lot of things involving them, like, really affected him personally because he was, like, their first, like
break, like, he brought them
yes.
in, like,
Oh
I
my
feel like
god.
I it felt like he felt, like, a sense of responsibility about it. I mean, like, knowing that, like, it's, once they're out of his whatever, it's out of his hands, but,
Yeah.
you could tell he really, like, cared for these people,
Yeah, which
and
we'll
he's
get to.
yeah,
Dude,
so
the ECW debt was
oh,
crazy.
yes.
This I was shook by this because this should outrage everyone.
Oh,
This
it
is
did.
just
It did.
bad.
ECW had its problems. And yeah. Well, there's a couple things we can watch about that also. But
Yeah.
essentially, while they were on suspension, Paul had given them kind of like office jobs to like keep them on the payroll. And essentially Chris was responsible for like booking the like flights and hotels and things of that nature. And so he would book the flights on his personal credit card and then get reimbursed by ECW. But what they didn't know was that ECW was struggling financially really bad. There are ECW wrestlers who will say like I worked for free for months. Like
Which is
or like
insane.
checks would bounce. Like people really stuck around during those like times because of how much they loved like what they were doing there, or they had like a loyalty to Paul, or they had other roles. Like most of the wrestlers in ECW had other roles. Like they weren't
Right, we were
just
talking about
wrestling. Yeah,
this.
yeah. They were like selling merch. They were doing commentary. They were answering all of the phones and emails and like everybody that wrestled there also had a like office job.
This
So
it is so insane because and this is, like, over dramatic, but, like, that's why we're here. I like, 'cause you talk about all the time, like, how people in Hollywood, like, young stars or pop stars or singers, like, get taken advantage of and stuff. You never hear about this, like, wrestlers and at least I don't, like,
mhm,
in your day to day, how, like, they really are, like, at least they were, like, really taken advantage of, and again, we'll talk about the Vince McMahon lawsuit, talking about people getting taken advantage of,
oh
but,
my god,
like,
yeah.
people really get, like, abused in
Right,
this, especially during this time period, like, that would to me, that is insane because, like, basically, Chris, like, accrued tens of thousands of dollars of debt that
mhm,
was just not reimbursed, and, like, it screwed them over, like and he was just
right,
doing his job, and personally, I would have never agreed to be like, "Yeah, I'll put" 'cause how many hotel rooms, how many like, plane tickets to fly an entire, like, coalition of wrestlers, like, from place to
right,
place almost every single day.
right,
It's expensive.
right.
I
It's
can I
baffled.
it's mind-blowing, mind-blowing.
Yeah. So from there, what, Chris goes to TNA after that point? Where are like there's like a
Oh,
gap in
I
between.
because so the next thing I have in my notes is like so he's accrued all these ECW expenses, which also they don't mention this in this documentary, but we've talked about it before where Tammy, aka Sunny, has a stint in the adult film industry.
Right.
And I think that that's around this time because they've accrued so much debt from ECW. She, like,
Mm,
has no choice, if I remember that correctly, and I could be wrong, but they don't talk about that in
mm.
this, which I thought was interesting because it's not like it was, like, meant to be PG or kosher because there was cursing, there was sexually
Right,
explicit
right, right,
things and
right.
whatever. I was kind of interested with that, but either way, I think it's because of the debt that they accrued from ECW, but I'm not 100% sure. But then his brother goes to talk about how there was like a pharmacy that was messed like that was you could just get somas
Mm,
like super easy, which was the drug of choice, the muscle relaxant for wrestlers, BMD.
mhm.
And he literally had like a seizure. He goes like he's sitting there with his brother with Chris and he's like, oh no. And then Chris just has like a seizure. He
Oh
like bites
yeah.
his tongue. He's
It's like bleeding
bleeding
everywhere.
everywhere. And he's going in and out. And the brother was like, yeah, when you're having a seizure, you like don't know. And they're asking him, like, what day is it? Whatever. And he goes, move. How many times has Ric Flair won the title? And Chris
He's
is
like
like 17 times
16.
or whatever. Like he
Yeah.
knows like all of those things. And I thought, dude, brother, like I said, was
On
the
point.
star of this
He knew.
episode.
He's like, I know my brother. He's like, I know my brother. Move.
I know my brother move. And like he just the genuine love after everything his brother had been through, and
Hmm.
like he just continued to be there for him no matter what. I mean, he is literally sitting side by side with him in a pharmacy where he knows he's getting drugs that he's addicted to,
Right.
but he never left him. Like
Right.
was and thank God, because he was like whatever. But yeah, then is when they go to Puerto Rico. I literally wrote my
Oh,
notes.
they do. Yeah,
They
they go
go
to.
to Puerto Rico. They look terrible.
Yeah, it's they cut to them like making an entrance, and it's brutal. Like they're talking one, the drug problem persists over there. It's just as easy to get. It's
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Then and then Sonny kind of talks about the conditions of the place. They're like it was like run down and broken and dirty, and people were throwing like batteries at them. She's like, I would leave every night with just like bruises from being pelted with batteries. Uh, right. Absolute insanity. Absolute
So
insanity.
insane. But they like look you can tell like the effects of the addiction is really taking its toll on them. Like they are like bloated looking and like confused and disoriented and just like you could just it was so quick because like they're involved in this the drugs and the alcohol and the partying and you know this and then suddenly like they show you the clips from Puerto Rico and you're like, "Oh my God."
Like they were
It like
in
caught up
it.
to them out of the blue. Like not
Right.
out of the blue, but like it was such a shift. And I was like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
they look like they are addicted to
Yeah.
drugs."
So when does he hit rock bottom? It's soon, right?
Yeah, so I guess and again, the brother is like I guess they're watching or the brother was saying they were having a conversation
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, "Man, all these like new guys coming up, like I don't know how they managed it." Like,
And the indies. Oh yeah, he's like, oh, I like working the indies. Like all these guys are like,
"Oh, yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah."
he's like, oh, I don't understand like why all these guys don't like, aren't better. Like I by the age of 17, like I was already like like ripped and I could do this and I could do that. And his brother was like, that's not like the normal. You were like exemplary. That's
That's
not
why
like
you made it here.
right. That's why you got to where you are. Like that's what did it. And he's like, oh, he said that Chris had this moment. He's like, oh, like I messed everything up, like, didn't I? And his brother's like, you're 30 years old. Like,
You
fix
can
it.
fix it, dude.
Right. Thick,
And
yeah,
he says his love for wrestling is what helped him overcome his addiction,
right. It's and
which
crazy.
I mean, just gets you, just really gets you.
And so like Chris like starts getting his like life together. He goes to Total Nonstop Action, which is a new wrestling promotion or new at the time. Um, and he seems to be like getting back to like his old ways. Like he looks better. He's performing in the ring. Like he seems happy. It was like noted that he's like, I felt like I got like the old Chris back. Like it felt like it was him again.
Mhm.
Um, only for tragedy to strike when he's in a
Devastating.
wrestling match and he breaks his shin, trying to avoid a camera. And from there, he has to have like major, like, he has to reconstruct his ankle. I don't know if you saw, but his foot was sideways.
I
Um,
know they showed it twice, and literally I saw it the first time and I was like, "Ew!" And then like
the
they
second
because
time, I was like,
bones,
no, that's my
I
thing
can't do
too.
bones.
Um,
Anything else, fine. And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it." Like
yeah.
I didn't need
So
to see it twice, but yeah, it
he,
was. Whew.
yeah. So he gets injured in that match, has to have surgery, and then proceeds to get on an airplane the following day. Or 2 days after surgery, which you're not supposed to do.
No, no, no.
Not supposed to do.
Not supposed to.
And we get a little like story from like the mother, basically explaining the last time that she talked to him, is that he like called her. He's like, oh, like I don't feel right, like, like something's like wrong, and she's like, oh, you just need to go to bed. And apparently that's the last conversation that they had, which is Crazy.
Literally, I just got chills all over again. I mean, and then I guess, like, the brother had talked to him on the phone literally the night before
Right.
and was like, "Yeah, like, we were just he sounded normal, we were just talking, whatever," and then I wake up in the morning to a phone call, and it's that Chris is in the hospital,
Right.
and I rush over there. This was
Yeah.
harrowing, like, this is his younger brother. I don't know if I said it, he was, like, younger. So he, like, it's the
Mhm.
person, like, he has idolized his whole life, has helped him through every horrible thing that's happened from him. He's literally witnessing his comeback story. Like,
Mhm.
how crazy. And then he gets there and he's shaking him and he goes, and then I grabbed his hand and I realized, like, it was cold and he was dead and I wasn't going to be able to wake him up.
Mm. That's
And,
hor
like, dude,
and he the way that
gut
he, like, talked
wrenching.
about it, where he was just like he's like, "That stuck with me, like, that image is just stuck with me forever. Like,
Oh, I just
I
got
will."
chills.
He's like, that is the worst moment of," and he talks, like, and he gets obviously visually upset, because it's just like, that's horrible. Like, to, like, come in and, like, and that's your older brother, and, like, granted, not true of, like, all siblings,
Siblings.
but, like, when you're a kid, like, you're growing up and, like, you're actually, like, close with your siblings are like your heroes. Like, they're
Dude,
like,
yes.
so, like, to see, like, your hero, like, crumble, or, like, really fall, especially after, like, having, like, stumbled and gotten back up, like, that's horrible.
I it was so gut-wrenching because I really didn't know much about him because by the time we started watching, for the podcast, he was, like, kind of mid-tier. Body Donnas didn't really, like, he wasn't involved in much, and then he just disappeared because, he went to ECW.
Right.
But so I didn't really know anything about him. When I was doing the deep dive on Sunny is when I found out that they had come to the WWE together. Like, I had
Right.
no idea.
Mhm.
But this and then so the brother, like, breaks down, obviously, and then everyone else is, like, talking about, like, Jim is talking about how he got the call and,
Yeah.
like, um, his old partner, whose now name is escaping me again, Pritchard, gets the call and he's like, "Well, you can't be talking about Chris
Chris, I just talked to
Candido.
him.
I
Yeah.
just spoke to him on Monday, and this was Wednesday." He was like, and he was totally fine. Um, and they all and I was bawling. I was bawling. First
Oh,
with the brother having he was crying and he's like, "Can you just give me a minute?" And he steps out. Then Jim's like, I don't get sentimental about a lot of people, but Chris really gets to me.
uh-huh.
Like that story. And everyone, Mick Foley, like, everyone is going through and they're just like crying so hard about
Mhm.
this. And it just gets to you because again, it's that story. Like, this is the next movie they need to make, like, about his life, because this
Right.
is like just so insane, the roller coaster, like, really to come back. And that's such a bad way to go. And again, his love of wrestling is what helped him
Saved him.
overcome his addiction and then killed him
Right.
because he needed to rest and he just, like, felt like he had to be there with everybody and he flew and
Got a
literally
blood clot.
a
Yeah.
blood clot that killed him, and it didn't need to be that way,
Right. At all.
and it's
So,
just devastating.
it's tragic. It's because he was 33 years old.
Oh
That's
my god.
what, 3 years from where we are now? That's crazy.
That is
Absolute
so
insanity.
sad, especially, like, to have, like, a family like that who loves you and, like, just people, like, wanting to see you succeed and, like, overcome all the horrible things that you've been through and done, like, you weren't a perfect person and, like, people still wanna give you a chance to literally follow your dream and, like, something you've worked out your whole life, and then to die like that
I
is
know. It's horrible. Horrible.
so messed up.
And then it kind of, like, it kind of gets the short end of the stick as far as, like, what happened to like, Tammy.
Well, because coming off of that, it's like, "Alright, like, now what do we do?" Because
So her problems persist. We'll keep it that way. She ends up getting 6 or 7 DUIs in the span of like a few years. She gets her license revoked, and she continues this behavior until she finds herself having accidentally killed a 70-year-old man in a car accident while under the influence.
Mm.
So she is, and this is like very recent. This is like it was just announced in like late last year that she will be serving, I think, 25 years for vehicular manslaughter.
Yep.
Uh,
And it was crazy because we were watching the episode, and literally it's like her hearing was in 2022. And I
right.
was like, that literally it just happened. It just happened.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we talked about it, like her sentencing.
Yeah.
Oh my
It just
God.
happened. Like we had a conversation with that a couple weeks ago.
It
Um,
is
yeah,
just
that
so insane.
that whole story was just like, oh, just gut wrenching. Like it's so sad because they came in so innocent and like
Mm-hmm.
and just like trying to make the most of it, and just to see it just get absolutely like derailed, and just how tragic he was lost, and then just the road that she continued and
Yes.
continues to be on
Yep. That's what I was gonna
is
say, is like the fact that they were basically on the same path, but I think his love for wrestling is what like anchored him and was able to like pull him out of it. Whereas Sunny, like, I don't know her psychology at that moment, but it's like it's not like wrestling was her initial thing. It just kind of like became her thing. And
right.
so it wasn't like, I feel like, a suitable enough anchor for her to be able to overcome like the
Hmm.
addiction and all of that. And it certainly wasn't Chris, because she was having an affair. So it's not like Chris was her anchor. Like,
Mm,
and I think that, I don't know, maybe Chris, like, it was wrestling and then it became Sunny. And that's like how things got messed up. And then when he like refocused and
right.
was able to go back into wrestling, like, he at least went out in a way where it's not like he
He got a
is.
little bit of redemption at the very, like,
Yes.
like he didn't
Yeah.
leave the world, in, a state that he wouldn't have been proud of, I guess. I don't know
Right.
if he
And
like I mean I'm completely speaking on the behalf of
well, I think the
people, but
brother said
like
that. Like, the brother was like, "Well, if I go out young, like, I hope I go out in like peak physical condition and, like,
mhm,
tan and muscular and whatever." And it wasn't necessarily the case, but it's not like he went out by getting a DUI and a vehicular manslaughter charge.
right. So
And they had the 10, dude, no idea. They do the 10 ring
the 10 bell
salute.
salute, yeah.
Jesus Christ. I
Oh,
was like, I
I've seen
cannot
it a few
cry.
times. Yeah, it's rough.
Harrowing. I could not
Mhm,
cry harder. I was like, this is, first of all, what a beautiful thing to do.
mhm,
Two, just like, oh my God, like, so devastating.
yeah. Ugh.
Oh God, what a doozy.
So that was Tammy and Chris. That was Tammy and Chris.
Yeah, I mean, wow. So much
Ugh,
more than I expected.
so much more.
So much
I
more
knew
than I
you were gonna love
expected.
this series.
I know. This needs to be his story, like, really needs to be the next. I didn't see Iron Claw yet. I
Me
do plan
either.
on seeing it because I'm going to. The literally the one thing that's holding me back is like, I'm so sensitive and I just know I'm going to be choking on my sobs. Like, because I already know it's bad. I
Yeah.
already know. I know a lot of it, and I just know I'm going to be devastated, and that's fine. But I feel like this needs to be a movie or something. Like, his life, his family, just like his
Mhm.
circumstances, where he went, what happened, like everything. I just feel like I
It
said, it feels like fated or written. It's just the most insane, insane thing.
ugh,
I don't know.
amen.
Drop your thoughts if you want to see the movie, because I would watch the
I'd watch that
crap out of
movie.
that
Ugh.
immediately.
We're probably gonna have to write it. Um,
Yeah,
all right. So let's transition into a more kind of current topic.
girl.
And for the sake of time, I'm gonna recap it for you all. So for those of you who are wrestling fans and have been living under a rock, it was announced, I guess, when you're watching this last week, that Vince McMahon is once again being sued for sexual assault. He has
Mm.
just gone through a whole investigation literally this past year, uh, which caused him to step down from the WWE the first time, and he came back because there was a sale of the WWE that he came back to like facilitate, and he's been kind of back since. He was on the board of directors of the TKO group, and it was still very much involved in WWE. Um, so it is he is essentially being sued for grooming and using a former employee, both for sex with fellow employees, trainers. She was also used as a bargaining chip in a contract negotiation.
Yeah.
So essentially the long short of it is that her name's Janelle Grant. She was, and I have to, just for the sake of, this is an ongoing lawsuit, so all of this is technically alleged.
It's alleged. We are just reporting. Don't
Right.
have inside scoops or the facts, quote
No,
unquote.
I just wanna share.
We're just
And
chit-chatting.
so the essentially the long and short of it is that Janelle was a like sole provider for her sick parents. They end up passing away. So she is, in a not great place in her life, and she's seeking employment. So essentially she goes into, she applies to the WWE, makes her way up, the interview process, and it is told to her that like Vince is very big on energy, so like make sure your energy's like up, whatever. Um
Ew.
so essentially from the rip, she doesn't get a job like immediately. He kind of like promises her like a job through like various like meetings, all the while like kind of getting less and less appropriate, let's just say, as far as like touching goes. And yeah, so he's doing this whole, it is predator behavior. He's found somebody that is down on their luck, and he is kind of, offering them, a way out of their situation
God.
and into essentially another one. um Basically, this kind of continues, where like he hasn't like quite placed her, but he promises that like it's gonna be like a thing. um so this kind of like continues. She finally gets a position, um and it he's kind of just like ongoing and like pressuring her into having like, sex with him essentially. And then she essentially gives in because he's at this point like controlling her, like her income, her health insurance, just he
Everything.
yeah,
Everything of value, and she's alone.
he starts like buying her like presents and like all this stuff. And there are like repeated points like throughout this lawsuit where she is essentially being like, I think we need to just, keep this professional, like this needs to stop. And he just goes like, that's unnecessary. And every time that he goes, like, he basically like dismisses her, and then just goes, oh, and remember, like, I like people that make trouble for me, like I have ways of dealing with them. I have money, I have lawyers, I have essentially like he's threatening her the entire time. So this gets is ongoing. Oh, and this is over the course of like, I think it's like 2019 to 2021. So it's
Oh, so
ongoing.
this is not that long ago.
No, this is very recent.
Oh, I did
So
not know that.
yes, so
Oh,
this is all happening very recently. So this is ongoing,
oh.
and he coerces her into having sex with him and I think it's either like a personal trainer or whatever, or like a somebody that also works, in the office. So it goes on to show like, he basically like forces her into this like threesome where she now has to like see this person just every day at work, just every day. And then like so that continues, and then he starts offering her up to uh like a fellow executive who is also getting sued. His name is John Laurinaitis. There's essentially an instance where they force her into a threesome in the office during work hours while everyone is working. And so there's been a lot of questions raised as to who knows what, who didn't say anything,
Oh
knew
my
was in fear
god.
of their jobs, knew and just looked the up, like who. There's a lot of questions as far as who knew.
Oh,
So and it's horrible. It like
it's
there
yeah.
are it's just he gets increasingly like more abusive and treats her less and less like a person. And you can tell like just the demeanor in his text messages that are also in the lawsuit, which I advise if you want, if it's graphic. So as a like a warning, I'll put a warning before the episode also, but it's it's graphic. He essentially had sex toys that he named after wrestlers that he would use on her, um, based on like the color that it was the race of the wrestler that he would name it after. He's like in these text messages, it's very dehumanizing. He's talking about like all of these people like just like using her and like just horrible stuff. Um, the worst of it is during one of these you know, forced threesomes, he apparently defecates on her head, leaves leaves to go shower, but before he does, he instructs her to continue fooling around with his friend or whatever. And so he goes and like showers and then comes back and apparently continues and just leaves her covered in his excrement, in just the most dehumanizing thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
It's
Um
disgusting.
and then just fast forward, she also as like during this whole time is eliciting like explicit photos from her and showing them to tech crew, other executives. It even went so far as to he offered her as an incentive to get a wrestler to sign a contract extension. It's horrible, horrible stuff. And just what's I think more surprising is not is yes, like this what I'm read is absolutely like shocking and abhorrent.
And
But what's more
disturbing.
surprising to me is the lack of surprise from everywhere else.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I think it's, to me, like, all around disturbing, absolutely disgusting, foul on an inhuman level, but it's the fact that, like, it's so explicit and so many other people got involved
Right.
and no one has said anything.
Right.
Like, because obviously more people than who were directly involved were aware of it. There is no other
There is no
possibility.
way.
Like, because it's not like he was hiding it. It seems very flagrant, like
No.
very
It is
obvious
very
abuse.
it is very and just the way that he like threatened her as far as like if she said anything, like what would happen. Oh, didn't even get to the best part. So the best part is he's estranged from his wife, general like they have been for
We
like a
would
long
hope
time.
at least.
He finds out about all of this and then he pressures her, her being Janelle, the person in the suit, pressures her to sign an NDA where he's apparently supposed to pay her like $5 million or something. He pays her the first million and then stops paying her. And that is why this lawsuit is happening.
He's so it's
It is the like absolute gall of thinking that you're so untouchable because you've surrounded yourself, it's I get it. It's not I get it. I don't excuse my whatever. I can understand why he would think this way in that
Mm,
this is his company. Everyone is bowing down and scraping and whatever to him. He holds all the power and he's made a shit ton of money doing it.
mhm.
So there is this kind of like, I'm untouchable, like grossness about it that
Yeah.
is just like, you fully believed that you were just allowed to just absolutely use another human being in any manner you saw fit, with the understanding on your part that there was going to be no consequences, that you
Mm,
are so good at what you do that nobody can touch you. Ew.
so
Ew.
gross.
I
So
was
gross.
I'm not, and the thing is, like, I was reading it and I'm in the same boat where it's like, I'm horrified by what I read. Am I surprised? Not really.
Yep. Because we see this so unfortunately all the time, especially like I said before, like in Hollywood, in the music industry, where it's such an abuse of power. And I think in industries like this, where like people's dreams are at stake and they're
Mhm.
willing to grovel and do so much, paying of dues because this is their dream, their lifelong ambition to be on this stage, to be in this space, to be
Right.
seen this way. Like it almost heightens the power dynamic where
Mhm.
a Vince McMahon or, like a director, like,
Doesn't
music
matter. Yeah.
mogul, like it feeds it more because it's like I'm literally in charge of making people's dreams happen and I can take them away.
Mhm.
Like, because in a corporate space where that the kind of thing happens also all the time discussing, it's like it's a job, but it's not necessarily like I didn't dream my whole life to be an accountant, which I could be wrong, and I'm not trying to like minimalize anyone's abuse in a corporate space, but it's like it's a weird like dynamic
No, it
to
is.
have like that
And
adds to that like
there
oh,
was a
I don't
wrestler.
know.
I literally just read it today. I don't remember who it was. But they said, like, he's like, things happen in the WWE that if they happened anywhere else are crimes, are
Yep.
like, is assault, is whatever. Like, if and for some reason it just gets like flown under the radar, and it's just like, no, like, we're not doing that anymore. Like, it's
No,
like,
because you don't need to do it. Like,
no, like,
it's like
at what
I
point do you like, is enough for you? Like, you are clearly so twisted, the fact that you need to put somebody in this position to have such control over somebody's entire existence is like how you find joy. I was like, you are ill. You're sick. Like, you need help.
yeah,
And like, I just hate how not surprised I am. I
I
don't
know,
feel good about it, you
I
know?
know, I so
I
get that.
and I was reading it, and like, these text messages are horrible. Like,
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine like sending this to like to somebody and being like, yeah, that's hot. Like, what?
really scary, and like, yeah, I don't know. I don't even like it is again, it's like shocking in the sense that it's not shocking, which is
Mhm.
so disturbing. And
Right.
like I was gonna say, I think like we're saying allegedly, we're saying, whatever it's going to whatever, but like there's a lot of evidence. And again, this isn't a rare occurrence in these types of industries. And I just like, I really hope that she
Gets the justice
receives
she deserves.
everything she needs, all the help she can get in every aspect, and like is able to hopefully heal and move on from this because it is like more traumatic than I could possibly imagine on like
No.
your body, your psychology, like your emotional state, your mental state. I just, especially to being in such a vulnerable place, losing your family, feeling you don't have a support system, finding it in this and it just being run over and abused is like just beyond. And I like ugh, it's just so insane. And it's also like the evidence of the fact that what we're watching right now, like the blatant sexism we witness and talk about on the
The
regular
show. Yeah.
podcast every single week,
Yep.
why there's no women wrestlers right now, like why, people like Sunny happen, or
Mm-hmm.
like, everything like that.
Yeah.
It's the building blocks, the foundational blocks for what
It's
ended
just
up occurring.
it's so horrible. It's just like watching it now, knowing
I
everything
know.
that is just like it makes it a little tougher, and that's sad. Like as a fan,
Yeah.
just
No,
like as
totally.
like it, and it just goes to show like you can do things are not um two very different things can be true. Like you
Yep.
can, provide this really, really great thing that lots of people enjoy. And like, it's a, it's a family show. Like they bring their family to it. And then you could also just be this like absolutely like horrible monster. And it's hard for people to like accept that in their heads.
Yes.
Um, but it's like that's the reality. Like is like there a lot of times really horrible people are also capable of doing pretty decent things. Like
Yep.
it's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, and not
Um,
like we're trying to give like Vince flowers or anything. It's
no,
not
no,
that.
it's
It's
not that.
not that.
It's just like, oh, like we enjoy this thing.
Wrestling, and yeah. And
Um,
I it's so funny, especially when we were talking earlier about Tammy slash Sunny and how like the lines of the character blur. I know that Vince ends up being like
the
number
character,
one
yeah.
villain like horrible person, and I don't know like the genesis of that really, but it's interesting that he is a horrible person in real life, commits horrible, disgusting acts of abuse on other people, and then somehow like it starts to bleed into like his professional like you know what I
Appearance,
mean?
yeah.
Yeah, like so it's almost like again like you can't even separate who you are from, you can't play this character anymore because it's so vastly different from who you are. Like Vince is just like, oh, like yeah,
Mhm.
whatever, impartial, quote unquote, like
Right.
whatever. And I think it's interesting that that's the way it like lends itself into being. And I don't know if that was intentional, or I mean, I'm assuming it was intentional, but like even just like to brush things off that he did as like being the villain. Like I don't even know. It's
And
just
no,
it's
it just paints like it's on like everything is just going to be painted a little differently now. Like there's no
yeah,
way to not look at things now and not like know who this man is.
it's yeah. And it makes everything so much grosser. Like when
Mm-hmm.
he does things, it just disgusts me. And like I don't know. Like, do we still watch? Absolutely, because there's so many amazing wrestlers who, like we've said, have worked their whole lives for this and are good people and
Mm-hmm.
just want to like go out there and like do their best. And unfortunately, they have somebody at the helm who has really disgusting, malicious intentions, and it's
Right.
like just crazy.
Right.
So,
Oh, all
oof,
right,
took a dark
guys.
turn, girl.
I mean, it's
We're
after
like, we're
dark.
gonna like chit chat and like talk, and then we're like diagnosing
No,
like
no, I promise not every episode will be this
this harrowing.
or heavy. But
Yeah.
it's happening now, and
And it's pertinent and we
we would
should be
be
talking about it.
remiss to talk like to not talk about it.
Absolutely.
And I think anytime you have an opportunity to be like that behavior is unacceptable and horrible and like is not something that has space in society, I think you should take it.
Absolutely.
I think that's important.
Without a
Um,
doubt.
so so this has been the first episode of the New to Wrestling podcast After Dark. I promise it'll get a little lighter. But
Yeah.
we wanted to just dive into a side of wrestling that, the the show, the New to Wrestling podcast, is strictly, we take it as a television show. This is going to be kind of more of a deep dive into the lives of the people that make the television show. And kind of, there is a lot of just troubling stuff that happens, that has happened, that either has made, tragedies out of wrestlers, or has now made wrestling better because this thing happened. But we want to talk about it. We want to dive in, and I think you really appreciate like the work on like the television show when you kind of have a base understanding of the people who are really putting their bodies and mental health and whatever on the line for the sake of doing something that they love. Uh,
Absolutely.
so we hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you next Saturday.
We'll see you then.
All right. Good night.
Good night.